So the IFDA is a nonprofit organization with a mission to support interiors and furnishings business. And I'd love to introduce to you a good friend and mentor of mine, Paula Rizzo. She is a media expert, author, and Emmy-award winning TV producer, and author of 2 books, Listful Thinking and Listful Living. I'll tell you a little bit about how those changed my life. But Paula, please introduce yourself.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. I'm so glad we could all be together and do this virtually and pop it together as soon as possible. But I'm thrilled to be here and help. Obviously, I'm a little bit of a fish out of water in your industry, which makes it really great for me because I'm able to come up and think of good opportunities and things that maybe you're not thinking of. So when I learn a little bit more about, what you're doing, obviously I've known Garrett for a very long time, so I sort of understand the designer a little bit. But I'm happy to help to, help you to elevate whether you want to be in the media and you want to be interviewed, on TV, on radio, or whatever, or just putting your own content out into the world. I'm a media trainer and strategist, so what I do is I help people to feel more comfortable on camera and to launch their products in a better way, but also to get yourself out there as an expert. And this is a really good opportunity, actually, to differentiate yourself from everybody else. So I'm thrilled to dive in. We can talk about media, we can talk about productivity, we could talk about being an author, writing, whatever you want, Garrett. I'm ready.
Fantastic. And that's absolutely why I thought this, because of our divergence, why I thought you would be a great speaker for our community, because as creatives, it can be hard to put ourselves out there and to know what kind of language we should be using and marketing ourselves the best. We approach describing what we do from a designer standpoint, and that's not necessarily commercial, and that's not necessarily applicable to the user end. So I thought you would be a perfect person to help us figure out how to poise ourselves in visuals, in text, in copy, and on camera, and even stay productive at home. I feel like you're a one-stop shopping for how we can build our businesses remotely at this point. So without further ado, I'd love to get to some questions, and we'll definitely be opening the floor up for the last 15, 20 minutes for questions that any of you have for Paula. But I want to start with, since we are working at home, how to stay productive at home. I mean, I know most of our community is entrepreneurial already, and many of them have been working remotely for a very long time. But productivity is always a challenge. And you, 5 years ago when I met you, validated list making to me. First, I thought it was a useless obsession that just stopped me doing other things. So for anybody else who might feel that way, or people who make a lot of lists but they don't feel like they get through them, what are some of your thoughts on and top tips for staying productive at home in list making or otherwise?
Yes. Well, one of the things we're all working from home now. So scheduling is super important, but beyond the schedule, what I do at night, every night before I leave my desk, whether I'm working at home or I'm working in a corporate environment, which I've done both, is to sit down and think through what is everything I need to do tomorrow, and not just need to do, but what do I have the time and the resources to do? And this is the important part. This is what people miss. What do you actually have the time to do? And most people they sort of overestimate what they can do. And they overestimate how long it'll take things. They say, oh, it'll just take 5 minutes. And it ends up taking, 2 hours or whatever it is. So be really realistic about how long things will actually take you to do. This is interesting too, when you're working with clients, when you're billing out clients, let's say hourly, you're going to know how long that project's going to take you. I use tools all the time where I use a stopwatch a lot of times like on my phone to just say, okay, how long is this task actually going to take me? So then I know how long I need to devote to that the next day. How long will it actually take me to do? Not how long will I get derailed and then have to come back. I think it takes like 21 minutes once you've been distracted to come back and start doing something again. So it's really about the focused work and how can you really make sure that you dive in and do things on your list that you have the time and the energy to do, right? We put so much stuff on our list. We feel like, oh, we didn't get anything done. But it's because you sort of set yourself up for failure. So I think looking at it realistically, what do you have the time and the resources to do? And timing yourself has been really, really helpful. I mean, that comes from my background as a TV producer.
Truly,
I know exactly how long 30 seconds is.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Yeah,
say,
how long a minute
one
is.
tip you taught me. I never timed myself before, but like, oh my God, she lives on a stopwatch. So it's a really
Totally.
useful tip. Totally. And one only you would be able to share with people.
And even for things that you're doing all day, like even now, like getting ready for this call, I knew like, how long is it going to take me to put my makeup on? How long is it going to take me to make a cup of tea? Do I have enough time to do that before I jump on this call? I know exactly how long it's going to take me. So I can look at the clock and say, okay, well, I've only got 3 minutes. I don't have enough time. So I'm going to skip that and I'll do it later after this call's over or whatever. So just knowing that, it really, really helps you to stay in the groove of the day and get the right things done.
Awesome. So timing is important. Know how long it takes you to do something, and then prioritize according to what you have time for. That's fantastic. I know in your first book, you had talked about creating separate lists for things that you can do immediately, like say people you need to get back to, projects you have that you need to follow up on, and things like that, which was tremendous help for me because I tend to put everything on one list, which usually is a page of 30 things, and it just becomes overwhelming. What might you suggest for our community in running their own businesses? What types of lists have helped you separate what you need to do for your business and stay productive throughout the day and prioritize those lists?
Yeah, I do keep separate lists, and I would encourage everyone to do that because it's important to first do the brain dump list, right? So it's like everything that you need to do, put it down on paper, get it out of your head, make yourself feel better. But then from there, you really need like an action list. You need the to-do list for today. So to be able to look and say, okay, what is it that, again, do I have the time and the resources to do? Looking at that list as sort of your action list and making sure that the way that you do it is that you make it very actionable. So don't just put, write emails, be very specific. You want to make sure that you're putting exactly who you want to write your emails back to. Like today I have reply to Christian, reply to such and such person. Like I have the exact names. So I know when I get in my email, because I'm going to get distracted. Other things are going to show up there. Things are going to pop up. So it's really important to be able to keep yourself focused. And with the separate list, this is how I do it. I keep one central notebook. I still make lists by hand. I also use apps too, which we can talk about. But I like to keep that one central place where on the left-hand side, I put everything that I have to do for work, right? And then everything that I have to do home-related goes on the right side. So they're on the same piece of paper, but they're just not right next to each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so then that way your brain doesn't have to figure out what to do with it.
I love that. That allows you, for creative, I can't speak for everyone, but I know for me, I have a million things going on in my head and I'm as much inspired as I am anxious about what I need to do. So being able to put all of that in one place just to get it off and recorded is super helpful. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And I guess that leads me actually to
one more note. If everyone can just mute themselves, I'm going through and trying to mute as much as I possibly can, but if you can mute yourself, that'd be terrific so that the recording is really clear. Thank you. Go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, so that kind of leads me to your next thing, the brainstorming thing. So Listful Living was your second book, and it's actually more of a journal, which I think is super helpful because now we're all facing disruption. We're all facing business not as usual. And I think that book, it helped me I was already pivoting 2 years ago really, but when this book came out, it helped me put that into perspective. Where was I really going? What was working? What wasn't? And helping me brainstorm that. So that is a journal that is absolutely helpful in doing that. Do you journal, and do you recommend journaling for creatives even with the business mindset?
It's funny. I actually don't journal. I really, really don't. The way I journal is that I make lists. Like I make lists of feelings. I make lists of ideas. I make lists of for me, it's got to be like quick pops. I love to write. I've obviously written 2 books. I'm working on a fiction book. So I like to write long form. But when it comes to journaling and thinking about things, for me, it works much easier if it's short. And so when I started to write this book, I thought, because I'm not a super journaler, what would be a good way to sort of do a little bit of both for people who do like to write long form journaling and other people who don't, like me. So there's exercises in there that really do take you through. You could do short little things or longer if you'd like. But the important thing here for all of this, whether it be your productivity or your business or whatever, is to really do it in 3 stages. So in the book, there are 3 stages, but you can do this for really anything. And the way that it works is, first, you have to look and see what you're doing. So just observe yourself. See what is your productivity like today, right? We're on this call today. Look at yourself today and say, how much did I really get done? Don't judge yourself. Just look at it. Just say, when did I feel most, scattered? Or, when did I feel like I was in my groove? You want to dive into that a little bit and think through, okay, you know what? Especially for creatives, right? Like, 11 a.m., that's when I get into my sweet spot of doing stuff. So I'm going to make sure that my calendar has those things in that time. So that's how I do it. I make sure that I'm really, locked into what I call my own productivity style. I don't like to get up super early in the morning.
Right.
I like to do things at a different time than other people. Because I run my own business, I can. And guess what? When I worked in corporate America, I did it then too. So you can do it no matter, really where you are. But I think it's important first to notice yourself, and then to think about, okay, what would the perfect day look like? What would the perfect business look like? And then what are the steps to get there?
Absolutely. And that's just it. When you're a creative person, you really can take leadership of yourself, but you have to know yourself before you start doing that. So holding yourself to a schedule that doesn't work for your body or your creativity can really get in your way. So really paying attention to when you're in your element and the kind of work you want to be doing is so essential. Well, there's so much we could talk about in the books, but I want to move on to some of the other areas here, because we were talking about marketing online, which everybody needs to be doing right now. It's the only way, actually. So for those, I know that some of us are already online and doing a really great job of sort of crafting our tastemakers essence. But for those who are just getting started, what would you, in your experience doing this for a very long time, what would you say are the biggest mistakes people tend to make in marketing themselves?
Well, people do make it all about them, all about themselves, all about, how wonderful they are. It's all about ego driven, right? So because I'm a journalist and because I've always worked in television for my entire career, I'm always thinking about the audience. What is the audience going to get out of this? So what is the reader? What are the people who you're trying to help? What are the clients, let's say, right? Those are the people you're going to serve. What are they going to get out of this? And so you're going to write things, you're going to share things that will help them. So it's sort of like a reframe, especially for people who are like, what am I going to talk about? Oh, everything's been said about that topic. You know what? You have an obligation to help other people. How could you be of service? How can you be helpful? And when you look at it like that, it really changes the game for what you put out into the world, So to think through whether or not you're writing a blog or you're doing a podcast or video or whatever it is. I always tell people to start with video because I love video. And what I do is I tell people to just, shoot a video with a tip, and then you can have that transcribed. Go to rev.com, rev.com. You can have it transcribed. You can turn it into a blog post. You can turn it into social media, little clips and things like that. So, thinking through what can you share? How can you be of service? So for instance, and there is one person who's unmuted who I cannot find, but if you can please mute yourself if you're not.
It sounds like CB radio going on over there.
I know, I can't hear it. So if you can find it, and mute them. But so here's what I did just last week, right? So this COVID-19 thing happened 2 Sundays ago. I thought, what could I do that would be helpful to people? And I thought, okay, well, I train people on how to be better on camera. So I could help people who are in corporate America, who are now working from home, who are conducting interviews and meetings and things that they're not face-to-face. I could help them. I could teach them how to do it better, how to look better, how to be able to connect with their clients in a better way. So I put together a training. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do that for myself, for my business, my small business, right? As an income stream. Cool. What else can I do? Oh, you know what? I can go pitch that to media. So I took that same idea of what I was already doing, my content, and I took it and I pitched it. And I pitched it to Fox News. And I said, hey, a lot of people are working from home. Here's some tips on how to work from home. Here's some tips on how to look better on camera, because that's now part of your everyday life if you're working from home and you're working remotely. Mm-hmm. And they were like, awesome. Great, let's do this interview. I did that interview with them. Then CNBC, said, hey, we'd love to do something with you. The Boston Globe. Today I'm doing something with Fast Company. On Friday, I'm doing something with entrepreneur.com. So it kind of gets the ball rolling if you're the one talking about it and you're telling them that you do talk about it. So I went back to a lot of the people who had interviewed me for my books and said, hey, I know you're looking for a lot of content now that has to do with coronavirus. If you need an expert, here are 2 things I can talk about. And a lot of them were like, oh, we're so happy to hear from you. We can't find enough stories. So I'm being helpful to them. I get it. And as a journalist, you need to do your job. You need to look for new stories.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So in your element, you were able to pitch media, which I think is awesome. And I think a lot of people here would like to get into media, interior design magazine, architecture magazine. How do you go about doing that? Like, how do you pitch them? How do you kind of think through what that talent you have is, and then craft that into something short and concise? Because these people don't have time and they get a lot of this. So how would you approach that for our creative community?
Sure. Right now, today, think through, what are the questions you're always answering? What are the things that your clients are always asking you? What is it that you find yourself saying over and over and over again? That is something of value because you're talking about it a lot. You're an expert at it. You already know what you're going to say. Mm-hmm. So think about that. Could you turn that into a blog post? Could you turn that into a quick, Instagram video or something like that? Could you use that content and then say, okay, who could this best serve? Who's the audience? So then next you're going to look to see what kind of outlet do you want to, pitch this to? So I did something with Architectural Digest when my book came out. They actually reached out to me, which was great. And I thought, this is an interesting audience that I would not have thought of. But we did talk a lot about, at the time, the book came out in September and they did the interview in like September. And it was very much about, creating space in your life for creativity, right? And I find that structure will do that for you. A lot of times creatives don't want the structure because we think, oh, well, it's going to stifle my creativity, but it really actually helps to fuel it. Because if you have this outline, then you're able to be even more creative, I've found, within that time. So like, let's say Architectural Digest, right? You know who's reading it. One of the ways that you can really know is to go through and look at the advertising of any magazine, of any newspaper, any TV show that you're watching, any radio, listen to it. Those advertisers, they pay big bucks to know exactly who the audience is, exactly who's listening, exactly who's reading. And when you know that, then your pitch will reflect that, right? So you have to look through, let's say Architectural Digest, just, pulling it out there, look to see what kind of things have they done before? What sort of things are they doing? Would it be in line with what you have to offer to their readership, right? But the lowest hanging fruit, right? So after you make that list of like, here's the things I'm always talking about, great way to produce content, is, we have a puppy.
Shush!
Unless I see that puppy's face. I'm trying to mute everybody. Can you mute yourself, whoever has the lovely dog?
Yeah. He wants to get in on the conversation. He's like, I've been trying to market.
I guess so.
I have an Instagram.
He's like, I have some media ideas. I'm sure he does have an Instagram. He probably has more followers than we all do.
He's probably more dogs on Instagram than people.
Exactly. So, okay. But here's a great idea. If you're like, I don't know where to start, I'm not sure what to do here. What you should do is go to helpareporter.com, and I'll put it in the chat. Helpareporter.com, Haro, right? And you've done this a bit, right?
Yeah, you got me into it.
Yeah, right. Well, I tell everybody to do it because as a journalist, I always used it to find great experts. And now as an expert, I also use it to get myself media. So I've used it in both capacities. And what it is that you sign up and you get 3 emails a day. It's a little overwhelming, but it's from journalists who are looking for experts. They are literally saying, here is a story I'm working on. I need an expert to talk about XYZ thing. And I've had great luck with it myself. I've gotten Dr. Oz magazine. I have a friend who got on the Steve Harvey show using it. Like, you just never know. The big media does use it, but it's great because you already know what they want. It's not like you're pitching them cold. So you're
Yeah.
able to see, but what has your experience been with it, Garrett? I mean, you've tried it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I've tried it a little bit and I've gotten some responses. I haven't been quoted yet. Actually, what I would really like to use it for is inspiring my own content. So I'll go on there and look for stuff like, oh, I know about that. And then I'll just write a really quick form article on it and then throw it up on my blog, like self-publish it or throw it on LinkedIn. It helps me kind of look at ideas that the world seems to want to know about, especially when I'm not feeling inspired about content. I think we as designers, we kind of discount our expertise. We often think that, oh, it's kind of common knowledge. Everybody I know knows about that, but regular people don't. So it's great to throw out one solution to a problem and say, oh, you know, designers have issues with Pinterest. Their clients are always finding what they need on Pinterest and not using my expertise. Well, here's a way to partner through Pinterest with your clients and leave that. So it's been really interesting in that way too.
Yeah. And you know, I did, so it's in the chat there. It's helpareporter.com. For short, we call it HARO, H-A-R-O. But helpareporter.com will get you to it. But yeah, I spoke last year at How Design Live, which is, you know, big conference for designers. And I did 2 talks, one that was about, you know, how to get media. And a lot of people there, designers, they were like, yeah, we didn't really think that it was for us. But when you start to talk about what you know and how you can get yourself out there and how much of a differentiator it can be if there are 2 designers who look alike, for clients to be able to choose and say, oh, well, this one has done a lot of media. It's just a perception thing.
Yeah.
Oh, they must know more. They must be better. I mean, it happens in every industry. It's a credibility boost.
Yeah. So speaking of that, then we will get into video in a second too, because that is very much the meat and potatoes of today. But appearances mean so much. And I even know from personal experience, 3 years ago, I would have never put a portrait of myself on my website, much less my Instagram or anywhere else. Now I'm everywhere and I've gotten sort of comfortable with it. What is your strongest advice for helping people who may be reluctant to, or maybe don't have, how to present themselves, a great photo, and then how to like really curate that taste into and bake it into their brand? It can be very easy for us to show less quality images or kind of just throw something up there that maybe is a little more democratized, but perhaps taints your brand. So how do you recommend people really craft that flavor and their image online?
I get it. Because when you're used to being a behind the scenes person where your work speaks for itself, look at what I've done. Right. I don't need to be seen. I get it. I mean, I've worked my entire career as a TV producer, as I said, but I'm basically a ghost writer. When I was working for TV news, nobody knew who I was. I was writing all the words. I was figuring out all the stories for the anchor, for the reporter. They were front facing. Nobody knew it was me. So the same here, right? A lot of it happens with authors a lot of times. They're used to writing the content and then saying, oh, I don't want to be the one who has to now perform it or talk about it. But guess what? You don't have the luxury of doing that anymore, because you want clients, potential clients, whoever might hire you, to love you. You want them to fall in love with you. I tell this all the time to authors too, because it's like, it shouldn't even matter what your book is about. I want them to love you. So they're like, oh, what was that book? I'll buy it. Whatever. I just like her. This is the same thing. You want to build a rapport with people. You want them to know you and like you. There's a guy who, I give him as an example in all my video, when I give, video presentations about how to do video, how to interact. He's a CPA and an attorney. I mean, super boring stuff that he's always talking about. Like, should you have an S Corp? Should you have an LLC? How do you file your taxes? Like, it's so boring, but I love him. His name is Mark Kohler. And he is so engaging on camera. I've never met the guy. I talk about him in every presentation I ever do. I just think he's great. Today, he sent out an email about doing some kind of webinar on, small businesses and COVID-19. And I was like, I need to hear what Mark has to say. I mean, I know he's like a trusted source in my business. I've never met the guy. So you want to be that kind of person where somebody across the country who doesn't even know you, look, they may never hire you as a designer, not yet, but you want to be seen as an authority that they go to see, what does that person think about that? I trust them. I know them. I like them. So that when the time comes, maybe you are the one that you go to. I don't know if you guys know Elise Benin, but she's fantastic, marketing-mentor.com. She has great tips for designers and creative people on how to, get your message out there and bring in the clients that you want. And it really is through the content that you share.
Fantastic. Well, and that's a perfect segue into video because yes, even as introverts, it's possible to be very likable on camera and really get your personality out. The problem with camera is it feels distant, it's detached. How do you really, it's a challenge to express yourself and really show up on camera the way you do in person. I know I do very well with people. It's really hard when there's a barrier to interaction. So with that in mind, what are some of your top tips for video and really getting your personality out there and showing up in the best light in that frame, now that our backgrounds are our status symbols?
It does matter. Yeah.
Yeah, it matters. So how can we, especially as some of these introverted designers who don't really, it's about the hotel I designed, not me, really step into that camera space and own it and really connect with people?
It takes practice. It's not something you're going to feel comfortable with right away. I am on this camera all day, every day. I do all my trainings, all my coaching, it's all virtual. So I've been doing this for a really long time, but I always do any of my media training, even if people are in New York, I always do it via video and remotely because I want them to feel comfortable talking to the camera. And the biggest mistake people make is that they look down at themselves and they talk and they do the videos and they do, and they're looking at themselves and not at the camera. So as awkward as it is, whenever you're doing these, like right now, I'm looking directly in the camera. So you guys think that I'm looking at you. There's a connection that's happening. Even though I'm not really looking at you, you feel like I am. So it looks better from your end. You feel more connected to me. If I'm looking down like this the whole time, there's a little bit of a barrier there. I'm not really sure if you're listening to me. It's a different message. So you want to make sure that you're locked into that camera, whether it be, if on Zoom, what I do a lot of times is that I'll make the video, the little box smaller with the other person in it and stick it as far up to the top as I possibly can. So it's really close to that green light. So that I'm just cheating just a little bit every once in a while to look down and be like, are they still with me? Are they still looking at me? Is this still exciting? And then the same thing for if you're doing videos on your phone, always hold your phone sideways. Don't do it up and down unless it's like Instagram or something like that where the platform makes you do it. And then always look in the camera. Don't look at yourself. So that's number one. Always look at that camera. There's an app that I love called Marco Polo. And right now, if you download it, you can use it with friends and family to stay in contact. And it's almost like it's like a messaging with video. So you can leave little messages for people. And it's really fun. And it gets you into the groove of talking to the camera, talking to the machine, as my mom calls it, like a person. Right? So you want to get into that mode. So that's number one. Start doing it, start building that. Number two is to make sure that the video is eye level, right? So this computer that I have is actually on a stand. I used to use books because I didn't have the stand, but you want to make sure that the camera itself is eye level. So you're not looking down at somebody. They're not looking up your nose. I'm sure you've all been on those video calls where it's like, somebody has it up their nose like this. So you want to make sure that you have it eye level. And then as far as lighting goes, don't get crazy. Don't go buying expensive cameras and expensive equipment. You can use what you have. I literally have a big window in front of me. So you want to use any natural light that you have and make sure that it's in front of you, not behind you. Because if you have that behind you, it's going to make your shot look super dark and people won't be able to see you. And then your framing. So you can see, Garrett, you're looking good. I like your framing. You want to make sure that you have not too much, this is called headroom, so above you. You don't want too much headroom above you. So you really want it to look, pretty squared up. And then if you can, to have some depth behind you. So some of you have some nice setups I can see, like you have stuff behind you. I clearly do not. I have a wall. So this is what I'm working with. It is what it is. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. Everyone will deal with it. But if you can show something sort of exciting or nice in the background, that's great, but don't overthink it. I would just say, make sure that light source is in front of you because you'll look good no matter what's going on.
Well, that's another interesting thing, and I think these interior designers can really take advantage of it. I really do think that our backgrounds are going to be the next status symbol. So curating what's behind you to really express who you are, I think is a really great way to connect with people. I know for myself, I love peeping in people's windows when I walk around in my neighborhood to see how people live and what their taste styles are. And I think the same is when we're watching these videos, it's a great opportunity to share something about yourself without it being the conversation. And it really gives you credibility if you do it right. So I think that's a really great way.
Yeah.
Like you have artwork behind you, even though you don't have much behind you, it still shows that you have some taste level in your home, but that you're at home. So I think that there's an ambiguous way to connect with people, and using our design expertise to really massage that, I think, is a great.
Totally. You guys can make it look way better. And I was on I did a 2-day thing for authors. Yesterday was a virtual thing. And somebody had said, you guys probably know this better than I do, but if you put something in the screen, so we're looking at the screen, top left is where everybody's eye goes right away. So they were saying if you're doing a video, you put your book right there in the top left, like behind you on the screen. So it's really top right. It's like right here. I would put, let's say if I had like a bookshelf behind me, I would put my book here because that's where people's eyes go. And I was like, that's such an interesting marketing trick right there. But that's where I would put it. If I had a bookshelf, if anyone would like to redo my background, please, give me any kind of tips, but I would put it there. So yes, exactly. So just keep it in the back of your mind. If there's something, if you do have a book or you do have something gorgeous that you want to show, you're going to want to put it here because people will see it.
Right. Even like products. I know a lot of our communities, some of them have products, pillows, chandeliers, wallpaper, things like that. And you can make a rotating background, which is something I think is really cool too, is like every time you show up online, change your background and make it like you have this wild world behind you all the time. It's kind of fun.
For sure.
And then I wanted to talk about authoring. So I do believe a lot of our creative community would also like to be known as a thought leader and perhaps write some books. Some of them already have. So what was your experience? I know I met you 5 years ago. You started a meetup group, and that's kind of how you sort of think tanked your list making to see if anybody even cared about this topic, which of course I loved you because I'm a fanatic about it. And obviously we've met a lot of other people who were. So it was really interesting to me that you spent this amount of time really in an incubator to figure out what people wanted to know and then put it together in a book. So what would you recommend for our creative community in the areas of perhaps color, perhaps design, perhaps living, workspace, hotel, hospitality? How would you give them advice in the publication journey? Like what are your thoughts on them getting started?
I will give you the advice that I was given because I always wanted to be an author. I always wanted to write a book. I never thought I would write 2 books about list making. I did not think that was going to be my path. Okay. But I said to a friend of mine who was a New York Times bestselling author again and again and again. And I said to her, I think I'm going to write a book. And she said, don't write a book, start a blog. And I thought, okay. And she said, just see if you have enough to say on the topic, if you're still excited about talking about it, and if other people care. Because you don't want to put all this work and effort into writing a book. It's a long process. If you find that after 50 posts, you don't care anymore about this topic, and nobody else does either. So if you think of it that way, to be able to just curate, and some of you may be already doing content. You may be already thinking, you know what, I know what I'm going to talk about. When I wrote my book, the first one, Listful Thinking, I was still working as a TV producer full time. So this was a side hustle. It was an exciting thing. I never thought it would then become my business, that I would become a speaker and then have an offshoot of that and become a media trainer and a strategist. And so there's a lot of little things that I do. But that was the best advice, was to first start just sharing. And I think we're all in a really great space right now because, look, you're all home. A lot of you are able to share things about yourself and show your background, show, how you're redesigning your space because now you're living with other people, right? Like people are home all the time working there. How do you define the different spaces? How do you do that? I don't know how to do that, but you guys do. So there's great content there that you could start sharing, and just pick your medium, right? What platform do you want to put it on? What do you feel comfortable doing? Some of you will think, oh, you know what? I'm not excited about writing. That sounds, so start doing video and get those videos transcribed. That's good too, but for me, once I did the blog, then it started to get interest and started to get people, into it. The journalist in me was like, hey, I wonder if other people are interested. That's why I started the meetup group, which was called Lists and Libations, that I created here in New York City. And Garrett, she was one of the first.
I was religious. You're mute, Paula.
Paula, we lost your sound.
We can't hear you.
Your audio went out.
We lost you. Can you
Okay, hold on.
Yay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
You can? That's so weird. I literally did nothing. Sorry. Maybe I was talking with my hands too much and I knocked something over.
Well,
I swear I know what I'm doing over here, you guys. Sure.
Well, now we only have, I think, 15 minutes left. So I want to open up questions to the audience because I know everybody's eager to get your advice on some of the problems they're actually sorting out right now. So would this be a good time to
yes.
Some people? Okay, so we'll take some questions.
Yeah, let's do it. There's a couple questions. So there's ways to do it, right? You can raise your hand in Zoom. So what you do is you go over to participants, you find your name, and then you raise your hand digitally, which is like an adorable way to do it. Or you can actually raise your physical hand in your photo, and then we'll call on you just so we can keep it together. But I just want to answer a couple questions that came up in the chat there. Someone asked about a digital background, which you can put digital backgrounds behind you through Zoom. There's a way to do it in the settings. I don't recommend it because I think it looks a little weird. You could tell that it's fake. And if you're wearing green, it might green is a color that you shouldn't wear if you're ever near, on a green screen or anything like that, because people won't be able to see you. So it depends sometimes on what colors you're wearing and things like that. Sometimes people will literally get a green screen or a black screen drop behind them and then do it that way. You could do it. I think it looks a little bit cheesy sometimes, unless it's really well done, which is, I think, very hard to do if you're not in a professional studio.
Or unless your style is kitschy, it could be super funny.
That's true too. Yes, exactly.
I would love to see running bunnies behind somebody. That'd be hilarious.
Yes, I love it. So I did see, so Carl, you have a hand up. Do you want to unmute and let us know what you got?
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate everything you've been dropping right now. I took a ton of notes. I do have one quick question. My job is to go out and meet groups of people. I met architects, designers, and go out and talk to them. So I've been trying to send video. So I've had a couple different ways of setting it up. In your opinion, what's the best way to accomplish that? Because I shake hands and meet people, and I'm in a house now.
I get it. It's very, very difficult. I'm actually doing a few trainings for salespeople and fundraisers who are like, we need to be in person with people to do our jobs. How we're going to do this way. So I'm working with a bunch of corporate clients to help them with that. So it is a huge challenge. One way, video. I'm glad that you mentioned it because that's going to be a huge way to connect. There's a couple apps that I really love that will be helpful. One is called BombBomb. So it's bombbomb.com. And what you can do is to create a video for somebody and it embeds it right into the email so they can see you. It's a good way to introduce yourself. It's a good way to follow up if you've already talked to them so that they see you and they continue to see you. So bombbomb.com, Vidyard is another one that I really like. It's an app. I use it with my clients a lot, because they'll send me videos. They'll say, hey, I just did this video. What is your feedback? What do you think? So instead of me going and saying, okay, let me type it out, and hopefully they don't get the wrong impression that I'm saying something in a different way than I am, because through email you can lose that, lose that connection with people. So I literally just get it on my phone. I shoot the video. I said, it was so great when you did this, when you did that, I wouldn't do that again, or whatever. I shoot the video over to them and they have it. So that's a good way to follow up and connect. But unfortunately, those are short. right? So you're going to be able to stay in their inbox, stay front of mind. That's all great for follow-up. But for the initial conversation with them, unfortunately, people are not so into video as much as we all are, you know, they're not understanding it. So you may have to hold hands a little bit with people and really just say, hey, you know, I just love, like, could we just jump on for 5-10 minutes and do baby steps with people, because they might not be open to doing a whole hour or a whole, you know what I mean? So just to say, hey, I just literally want to take 10 minutes and jump on with you and say hello and hear from you. What is it, you know, that you're struggling with or whatever, you know, like, how are you? Is there something I could do for you? I mean, you could do this with your own clients now, right? I mean, you could just shoot a little video for all your clients, all your past clients, and say, hey, just thinking about you. If there's anything I can help you with, I'm here. Let me know. You know, you never know. I mean, I had a client of mine do that, and he ended up getting more business out of it. And he's actually he's somebody from How Design Live. He was a designer for a lot of the big box stores that he does, like, you know, designs for like Home Depot and things like that. He works with smaller teams too. And like, hey, actually we have a need, you know? So you never know, like you have to be front of mind. It's the same thing with what I did with media. I went through and I was like, hey, here I am. If you need me, and they're like, yep, we do need you actually. Right. But they didn't think of me right away, which is fine. It's okay. My ego will heal, but.
I love that. And that's absolutely important. I think people, especially now, we want to connect. People want to see people they knew and kind of feel normal again. And especially if you have something to offer or a solution, people are so panicked right now that it's hard for them to even solve the problem. They don't know they need you. But I think now is a great time to keep circling back on your clients and building those personal relationships, because now we need each other more than ever. Do we have another question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jonathan, I think, has one. Jonathan, you want to unmute?
Thank you. Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Paula. You're so generous with your knowledge and expertise, and I'm very grateful, and I know the other participants here are as well. I just want to acknowledge you for that. So
thank you.
Thank you. I'm an interior designer, and I niche marketed many years ago, and I am positioned as a leading brand in New York City in my niche market of interior design, which is apartment building public spaces. And yep. And so I remodel and redecorate existing apartment building lobbies and hallways and other areas of these public spaces. And in this particular market, and I'm on page 1 of Google.
Yep.
And
cool.
I have, thank you. And I have a lot of marketing collateral. I have assets. My question is, what is your ideas for me to take it forward in this market? And I'm not panicked, by the way. I just want you to know that. I want everyone to know that. That's the worst thing you can do is panic. You know, we're Americans, and this is going to work out, and this is a sickness, and this is all going to work out. But if you panic, then you're gonna really fall apart. So back to my question.
It'll all come back around. But so for you, is it more how to sort of pivot now? Like, are there opportunities for you? Here's the thing, because you're not physically able to go to spaces and see them and design them and say, hey, here's what I would do. Are there ways that you could help, I don't know, a different subset of people, right? So what you know is very, very valuable to people who are creating, I mean, people can't really get together, you know, but like, can people use what you know for their own environment, for their own home? Like to say, hey, there's something that I did that made this public space really homey, that people who lived in this building love to go to this place, and this is what we did there. Is there a way you can take that same concept and make it like a home concept, so that you start sharing those tips to say, hey, you know, I did this on a huge level, but here's how to micro it down. Here's how you could do it at your own home. And that tip will help people whether they live in New York City or if they live, you know, in Toronto or wherever, and you could take your message even further. Or maybe it is that you want to stick with like the smaller spaces, you want to stick with the New York market. Can you do that for people who have really small spaces, who are not able to now go to these bigger places? You know, that same feel that you gave those public spaces, could you somehow give those to people? Like, I don't know what those tips are, but like, is there a way for you to do that? I would just challenge yourself to think like, what are the things that I did? Like, what were the elements? How could this be helpful to other people? Because eventually, I mean, you're right, eventually everybody will be back to normal and things will be fine, and you'll be doing this for people in person and their public spaces. But right now, people are not thinking of that, you know?
No,
And that's a challenge for all of you.
Yeah, you know, I'm not so concerned about right now. I'm planning 6 months out. And more specifically, my question is, like, what kind of publicity would you suggest that I target? Like, it sounds like just by me having this conversation, it's back to the New York Times. It's local publications about what I do, tips about what I do, and solving problems about what I do. It's about taking action.
Well, yeah. It's about what can you serve, how can you serve the people who are reading that publication? That's it. Yeah. That's it. And whether or not they ever hire you, that's the thing. That's the part that's so hard, because we think of marketing as, oh, I'm going to put this out there, I'm going to buy this ad and people are going to hire me. But that's not how media works. Media, it's very much for credibility boosting. It's to get your name out there. Look, it can turn into business. Absolutely. It's happened for me. We got a mention for one of my online courses, Lights, Camera, Expert, in Forbes. And somebody clicked on it. Somebody came to my website, got on my list, purchased the course, right? That course is a $2,000 course. They purchased that course. From there, they came and they hired me privately as a coach. So yes, that turned into media. That doesn't always happen. I mean, into business, that doesn't always happen. But it could be a good way for you to just get your name out there and stay on people's minds. Like Mark Kohler, the guy that I love, the CPA. He's always in the back of my head of like, oh, I wonder what he thinks I should be doing right now. It's the same thing. You want people to think, oh, I wonder what Jonathan thinks I should do. That's totally what you want.
Well, and I think you also there's an underlying point in this conversation too, was transference of old material. I think that we often move past our projects and things that we've accomplished in the past because they're done, but it's a great time to bring that to the fore and tell that story again and pitch those media outlets. So if you're looking for media, write a list on the medias you want to target, package that content in a short little video or like a brief 300-word blog and send it out there, like to New York Times if that's where you're targeting. People want content. People want more advice on these things. I mean, we're all stuck home reading books, so not that that's a bad thing. I love that, but it's
a good time for the book industry. I mean, not totally. It's kind of interesting because I was just at that conference and they were saying, and my publisher told me too, Amazon actually stopped buying books from publishers because they can't ship them out. They're only doing essentials right now. So the ebook market is exploding. The audiobook market and children's books are actually like through the roof because now people are home with their kids and they need to give them something to do. So, but Jennifer Mason has a question. Jennifer, do you want to unmute yourself and ask it, or I can just ask it on my own here if you'd like. Okay. Well, if you'd like to pipe up at any point, please do. But her question is, do you think with the existing situation, it's better to be proactive and potentially contact clients too often, or to keep working on your own brand and filling content that people are attracted to? You got to do both. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's you go and you reach out to those clients and you say, hey, I mean, I've done it with a bunch of my clients where I've said, hey, I had this good idea for you. Past clients, people I've worked with before, hey, maybe you should be talking about this. Are you pitching media? Are you doing videos on this? Just to put an idea in their mind, and maybe they'll hire me again, maybe they won't, and that's okay. It's like I always want to be a resource and be helpful to them. I've had somebody who took one of my trainings from USA Today. He's a salesperson. He said, I want to reach out to my clients, but I don't want to feel like weird about it. What should I write? And I literally wrote the copy for him. And I said, here's what you write. You literally say, hey, I was thinking about you. This is, a really like uncertain time. I just wanted to say hello, check in with you, see how you're doing. if there's anything I can do to support you or your business, know that I'm here. I hope you and your family are doing well. Period. The end. Be a person. That's it. You know, this is not like you're not jumping on saying like, oh, I could do this or I could do this or I could do that. Just be nice. That's all.
Absolutely. A lot of my clients have put a lot of our projects on hold too. And it's a very sensitive situation, and I totally get where they're at. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people are saying, oh, these companies are laying people off and they don't care about their employees, but there are a lot of companies that are living paycheck to paycheck too. And when their income flow stops, they can't help it. It's not a cruel thing. It's just that's what's happening. And they will pick back up where they can. But I mean, and I've been saying these emails, like, here's an idea, you know, I'm happy to conference. I'm happy to do a strategic session for you, totally off the books, just to get you back going. Because I realize our agenda has shifted, and they've really appreciated that. It's been incredible. And actually my paycheck has gone through the roof in doing so. Cause I'm like, oh my God, we got to get you back on your feet. So it's really been a moment where we've bonded more as people in this comedic sort of conversation that's just loose. It's also like there's no money behind it. So you can really get crazy. You can say the most bizarre things and you're like, I love that idea, but no. And you're not going to get fired.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. I'm not actually working for you now, so it doesn't actually matter. So
we're just throwing out ideas, and we're all desperate here. So I mean, not desperate, but like we're all just really kind of going, what's going on and how big or small can we make this? So I think it's a great opportunity to engage our clients in a very low key, like, hey, I care about your business, you care about me, let's create something together. And then they'll definitely be circling back with you when the money comes in again. And this is all very temporary. So that is awesome advice. Do we have any more questions? We've got 7 minutes left. And I really want you all to get what you need out of this. Of course, you can always follow up. Again, we're going to do some other sessions in the future. But yeah, you've got Paula, who's got so much expertise on all these areas.
Actually I have a checklist. If any of you are interested, it's if you go to PaulaRizzo.com/checklist, it is a checklist to become a go-to media expert. So of course I do share a lot of media savvy things, but also how to produce your own videos, how to feel more comfortable on video. Every once in a while I'll throw in a productivity tip here or there. You know, and my book the new one is Listful Living. So if you go to listfulliving.com, you can check that out. And you know, if it speaks to you, I would appreciate, you know, an Amazon review, buy it, whatever, as a way to get more list makers out into the world and calm people down, and at one list at a time. But I'm happy to answer any other questions. If anybody wants to unmute, we can do it like this. And yeah, I feel like it's a good time to start being out there and really, you know, get yourself motivated to connect and think about it as a connection point, right? Whether it's through email or video, really, how can you get your own voice out there? Okay, so there's a question. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, even as a pivot, like if you've been working with clients you're not that excited about, now is a great time to start informing something you are excited about. Like if you want to do hotels, start talking about hotels. What was do we have
absolutely.
Who's the question?
This is just a thank you, and would love to talk to you about addressing our virtual chapter. Sure, I'd love it. I love talking, so I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to help. But yeah, if there's no other questions, otherwise, you know, you can connect with me, PaulaRizzo.com/checklist. One more question. Okay, it's from Lena. Lena, if you want to unmute, you can, but I'll start reading your question. When you say media, are you referring to national publications, TV, or local? I'm talking about all of them. Entirely local. My business is entirely local. National media seems daunting in the absence of strong PR. Okay, here's the deal. No one gets national media off the bat. It just doesn't happen. Unless some video that you did goes viral and the Today Show calls you because you have a zillion views, you're not going to get booked on the Today Show right out of the gate. You're just not. So you have to start local. So start in your local market. You know, TV, radio is great. Podcasts are fantastic. I realize it's not visual for those of you who are work in visual medium, but what the people who listen to podcasts have chosen to listen to that podcast. They have opted in to listen to it. So they are more affluent. They typically buy more. They trust the host. I have sold tons of books on podcasts. You know what I didn't sell books on? Going on Fox 5 in New York. I loved it. It was fun. It was great. I hung out with Ernie Anastas, who I grew up watching. I thought it was awesome. But it doesn't move books. You know what I mean? It doesn't move product. So if you're thinking in terms of like, oh, that's too big, start small. You really want to start magazines, podcasts, radio, local news, work your way up, and then you pitch national. I mean, I was a national producer for a very long time. We wouldn't take a chance on somebody who hadn't done anything. But right now, you know, another thing, like I'm doing an interview with Fast Company after this. Now people are interviewing people at home. They're not bringing people into their studios. So there's a great opportunity for you to also be able to be a resource where you are, right? And that doesn't mean it has to be New York. It could be Chicago. It could be, you know, anywhere, really. You know, I realize we don't even know what the media is there, but your message could be, you know, go to local markets all over the country.
I think that's a great tip. And I think we often tend to think big because it's, you know, it's in our face. We know Fox, we know Today's Show, we know all these things, but there's so much value in micro producing and getting in on a local level where it is a more of a niche market. I mean, just start with a show that actually has your common values, or a media channel that already has your audience of a very niche thing. I mean, I subscribe to Rug News Magazine. You know, that's very specific. Not everybody is excited about rugs, but I love that they are. And if you can get an article in there and talking about why rugs are so exciting and why they really change a space at a very reasonable investment, why not throw something out there and start small? Once you build that list, then you can start pitching some of these bigger things. I always say, well, my grandma, I guess, is the one who sent this to me, but nickels and dimes, pick up those nickels and dimes off the street, because those are going to build the dollar. So if you can get small media, small magazines, do it. If nobody else has a question, I wanted to ask you something.
Sure. And I did put my email in there. Someone had asked for my email. Yes, of course. Paula@PaulaRizzo.com. I put it in there. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, anything like that. I also, just quickly, before Garrett, I know you want to ask something else, but if you are interested in, you know, chatting about possibly working together, I'd love that. Like, what is your next step, whether it be through, you know, media or content, whatever. If you go to speakwithpaula.com, I have an application there. If you qualify, I have a, you know, small amount of spots for these kind of calls where we can chat about, you know, where you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. And if there's something I can do to help you, I can 100% tell you, you know, what that looks like. So if that's of interest, it's speakwithpaula.com. Garrett, back to you.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you is, so all this great content and all this great advice, we learned so much from you today. So how could we continue to get more advice from you, learn more, talk with you, or hire you if we want to get to media coaching? And I know you've coached me on camera. That's why I was able to frame this beautifully. So
yes,
feel free to share a little bit more about media training for some of us who are a little camera shy.
Yeah. And, you know, and it really is presentation training. You know, I've called it media training because people in the media TV world, that's what they call it. That's what authors call it. That's what publishers who hire me, that's what they call it. So they know that, but it's really presentation. And a lot of the people that I work with chefs, I work with, you know, people who do all different kinds of things, fitness trainers. They've been able to say, hey, I'm able to now talk to my clients in a better way. So for them, it's not even about just like, oh, I'm going to be on the media. I'm going to be in media. I'm going to be doing an interview. It's like they want to be able to communicate better with people in person or virtually. I mean, I work with a lot of speakers too.
It's communications, and now more than ever that it is a skill that everybody wants a piece of. So that's great.
And if you're interested too in media, doing media or anything like that, I mean, I do send out a lot of free tips and tricks. And I actually have Be a Media Magnet. I have so many websites. Magnet.com, which is basically, it's a free 3-part video series, which teaches you how to pitch. So if you are going to do it, it'll show you, okay, here's the elements, here's what you need to think about. And then, you know, here's what to do next.
Awesome. All right. That is our fun-filled hour with Paula Rizzo. I hope you all got something out of it and are inspired to move forward in this exciting and uncertain time. Thank you for joining us. And please follow us.
Yes, feel free to unmute now. I know I've been yelling at everyone to mute, and I thank you. I appreciate you. The producer in me is like, but the replay.
Thank you so much, Paula. Really appreciate it.
That was great.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thanks, Garrett.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. This was awesome.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
Garrett.